This is Poppy and Rye Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is called The Rain Falls. Poppy and Erith trudged along in silence. With her mind taken up by thoughts of the mouse with whom she had just danced, she was grateful for the quiet. How very much like Ragweed he was, and yet how different. While they looked alike, the stranger seemed softer, gentler than the bold, headstrong Ragweed who she had known. Certainly this mouse was more romantic. Was he, Poppy kept wondering, a dream or not? If he was a dream, he was the best dream she had ever had. Still, she hoped he was real. If her dance partner had been real, how could she find him again? Of course, it was impossible that she had been Ragweed, but the mouse clearly was a golden mouse. If there was one golden mouse in the area, perhaps there'd be others. Did that mean she was nearing Ragweed's home? As they walked, Poppy hummed the snippet of the tune she had composed for her dance. So preoccupied by Poppy by her musings that she failed to even notice that Erith was frowning and grumbling even more than usual. "What's that noise?" he suddenly asked. "It's me, humming." "I'm in no mood for music." "How come?" Oh, forget it." Poppy paused to look at her friend closely. There was a look in his eye that she had never seen before. "Erith," she said, suddenly alarmed. "What is it?" Erith looked a little sheepish. Well, Bumblebee flunked, never mind." Poppy offered a worried glance, but chose to ask no more questions. In any case, she preferred to think about her dance. Once again, she began to hum her tune. Her two friends continued west. When on occasion they met others on the path, a mole, a water rat, Poppy asked if they had ever heard of the brook. Much advice was offered, directions were given, and sure enough, another brook was found. Small and calm, it was very much what Poppy had imagined she was looking for. To her disappointment, there was no golden mouse that lived thereabout. A resident otter did inform Poppy and Erith that there was another pretty shallow brook no farther than 2 hills beyond in that direction. The otter pointed due west. "I bet we'll find it this time," Poppy hopefully said to Erith as they stared again. Erith grew even more gloomy. Though the day had begun bright and clear, the sky had turned gray and cloudy and the air heavy. Treetops flicked and bobbed in a humid breeze. Birds flew high and fast. Clearly, a storm was coming. With new urgency, Poppy and Erith trudged towards the crest of the second hill. "Maybe when we get to the top, we'll see the brook that the otter mentioned," Poppy said. "As soon as we get to the top of the hill," Erith proclaimed, "I'm going home." "Why?" "I'm sick of walking," the porcupine replied. From the crest of the hill, they looked down at the valley. At the very bottom was a pond. "No brook," Erith said. "Let's go home." "Well, actually," Poppy pointed out, "there's a brook leading to the pond and out of it." Erith muttered something unintelligible under his breath and said, "It's going to rain." "Erith," Poppy said, "rain won't hurt us. I'm going to check the brook." Even as they stood, drops began to fall. At first it came slowly, great plops of water, and then while lightning crackled off in the distance, north and thunder followed, a steady drizzle began to fall. Erith wheeled about and moved towards a clump of trees. "Where are you going?" Poppy called. "What do you think, Toadwort? Out of the rain." "Erith, I want to explore the brook." "Buzzard fraps," the porcupine muttered. Poppy watched Erith go. "Will you promise to stay there until I search for a little bit?" she called after him. "I never promise anything." "Well, how will I know where you are?" "Watch my tracks." Poppy waited until Erith retreated to a cottonwood tree and started to climb it. She noticed its position and then hurried down by the path. By now, the rain was falling steadily. For his part, Erith looked around, saw which way Poppy was going, down the other side of the hill, and then curled himself into a tight ball and closed his eyes. "I never should have come," he murmured. "Ragweed. Nothing but Ragweed. I thought I was her best friend." Poppy was approaching the pond. Halfway down the hill she could see that had been created by beavers. At the end was a dam, and Poppy could even observe the number of beavers hard at work. Some were swimming upon the pond's surface. Others were laboring at a lodge. A few were working on the main dam, building it higher. At the far side of the pond, a particularly large fat beaver was gnawing upon the trunk of an aspen tree. There was a sharp crack as the tree snapped. It tumbled to earth, landing with a crash. At the sound, all the beavers in the pond looked around. When they saw it was a tree had fallen, they began to slap the pond's surface with their tails. Poppy, standing in the rain, looked on, heard someone say, "Awful, just awful." She turned. Sitting beneath a large toadstool, protected from the rain, was a golden mouse. Poppy's heart fluttered. For an instant, she thought it was the one whom she had danced. Then she saw that this mouse was tall and thin, was a female. "Hello," Poppy said. The mouse looked beyond Poppy. "Oh, hi," she said. She sounded unhappy. "Do you live around here?" Poppy asked. "Yes." Are there a lot of you around?" Poppy inquired. "I mean, golden mice?" The mouse looked down at herself as she had never considered the questions before. "I suppose." "My name is Poppy," Poppy said. "I'm a deer mouse." "My name is Thistle," the other said. "How come you're standing in the rain?" "Oh, right, I am. May I join you?" "Sure." Poppy darted under the cover of the toadstool. Thistle, making room, said, "Where are you from?" "Back east, over by Dimwood Forest." "Never heard of it," Thistle said with polite indifference. She turned back to stare down at the pond, water dripping from around the edges of the toadstool like a tattered curtain. "I hate beavers," Thistle said. "Why?" "Well, they made the pond and ruined everything for everyone. This brook used to be so cool." Poppy's heart gave a lurch. "Is that what you call it?" she asked, her voice faltering. "The brook?" Thistle nodded. "You wouldn't think it used to be small and calm, and look at it now," she said sadly. Then she added, "Our home was right here on the banks of the brook, and now look at it." "No more. Flooded out. We had to move away because of them." Poppy was trying to restrain her growing excitement. "Thistle," Poppy said nervously. "What?" "Does the name ragweed mean anything to you?" Thistle had been gazing mournfully down at the pond, and with that name she whirled about. "Ragweed?" she cried. "That's my brother. Do you know him? Have you seen him? Do you have any idea where he is? Is he coming back? I can't tell you how much we need him." Instead of answering Thistle's barrage of questions, Poppy asked one of her own. "Are your parents named Clover and Valerian?" "How did you know? Ragweed must have told you. But that means you do know him. Oh, man, you've got to see my parents. Our nest isn't far," she went on. "Come on, please tell me about Ragweed. What is he doing? You don't know how much we've missed him. Do you know when he's coming? We really need him back. I've got tons of brothers, but Ragweed is the best." Managing to push down her emotions, but speaking in a strained voice, Poppy said, "I think I better talk to your parents." Thistle darted into the rain. "I'll take you. What did you say your name was?" "Poppy." "Poppy, you won't believe how glad my parents will be to see you." With Thistle looking over her shoulder to make sure Poppy was following, the two mice made their way through the rain along a path that led uphill from the pond. The further they went, the more nervous Poppy became. "It's just over here," Thistle kept calling. They had to come to a large boulder embedded in an outcropping of earth. A variety of shrubs and flowers rimmed the rock. In the rain they seemed as shrunken and cold. Poppy herself was thoroughly soaked as well as trembling. The wetness came from the rain, but the trembling came from her emotions. The Thistle was just as wet. She was too excited to notice Poppy's state. "Just follow me," the young mouse said. Darting along the back of the rock, they plunged into a small hole which was screened by some flowering rose crown. At the entry hole, Poppy paused to give herself strength. "Why did I ever want to do this?" she wondered. Thistle popped back out of the hole. "Come on," she called, and then plunged down the tunnel again. A reluctant Poppy followed at a slower pace. She could hear Thistle yell, "Ma! Pa! Everyone, guess what? Someone's come with news about Ragweed." Full of dread, wishing the tunnel was 100 miles long, Poppy crept the whole way. All the same, within moments she entered the nest. In a glance, Poppy saw the nest for what it was, A single shabby room stuffed with a golden mouse. Golden mice tend to be bigger than deer mice, so Poppy's first sensation was not only that there were a lot of them, but they seemed quite large. But Poppy had not the slightest doubt that she was in the presence of Ragweed's family. The resemblance was uncanny. It was as if she were in a room full of familiar ghosts. She felt weak. There were 2 adults, Clover and Valerian, plus 11 children. The children ranged from fully grown young adults to squeaking infants, one of which was being burped over Clover's shoulders. When Poppy entered the nest, the golden mice all stared at her with twitching ears and wide eyes. "This is Poppy," Thistle announced excitedly. "How do?" Valerian said, standing tall and thin and fussing with his whiskers. There was a tremor in his voice. Clover, very pale, said nothing. Her black eyes opened wide, just staring at Poppy. Her whiskers were shaking. Thistle cried, "Poppy knows all about Ragweed, don't you?" Poppy was so choked with emotion, it was all she could do was nod a response and gaze from face to face. Suddenly she stopped. At the back of the pack was a mouse she had danced with. There was the same sweet, soft, noble face and the same right ear with a notch. Their eyes met and held. Poppy's heart fluttered. Grief, joy, relief, sadness all mingled, but in such confusion she hardly knew what she felt. She lowered her eyes. Valerian, his voice husky, spoke out. "My dear Miss Mouse, do you have some news about our son Ragweed?" "Yes," Poppy managed to say. What happened to him?" Clover blurted out. "When is he coming home?" Poppy found it impossible to speak. Instead, she sought out the face of her dancing partner. Once again their eyes met. How she wished he were not there. How she wished she were not going to say what she had to say. "Please," she heard Clover beg, as if from some distant place. "I really must know." As Clover spoke, she stood up, infant still in her arms, and reached a paw to touch Valerian, as if she were in need of steadying. Her round, heavy body seemed uncertain on her stumpy legs. Poppy turned back to Clover. "I'm afraid Ragweed—" The next word stuck. She could not speak the word. She had to force it out. "Ragweed is dead," she finally said, her voice tiny. Utter silence. "Dead?" A small voice, a youngster's, echoed. "Dead?" Clover repeated. Poppy could only nod yes. Valerian cleared his throat. "But how?" he managed to ask. "An owl killed him." "An owl?" someone said, and then there was silence again. Suddenly Clover sat down. "My own poor sweet boy," she sobbed. "Can you tell us more?" Valerian asked in a choked voice. Poppy closed her eyes. When she opened them, she sought out the face of the mouse with whom she had danced. When she found it, it was full of awful sadness. We were in love," Poppy said. "We were going to marry." "Oh my," Clover murmured, putting a paw on her trembling lips. Valerian swallowed hard, cleared his throat, and said, "Poppy, we thank you for coming and telling us." He wiped one tear from his cheek and then the other. "I thought you'd want to know," Poppy said softly. "That's why I came." The golden mice stared at Poppy as if she had spoken a strange language. Clover, letting escape a small squeak, even as she stroked the baby she was holding, said, "It's a terrible thing to live beyond our own children." With great effort, Valerian drew himself up. "Poppy, it was really generous of you to come so far and bring us the news. You must be tired." "I'm all right," Poppy said. "You're welcome to stay with us as long as you would like," he added. It's not where Ragweed was brought up, but we've fallen on hard times, so the beavers think our nest." One of the youngest mice shouted. All the children began to talk at once. "Poppy, I must ask you something," Clover suddenly said. In an instant, the nest became quiet again. "Yes, please," Poppy said. "I hope you loved our son very much," Clover said. Poppy didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down at her toes and then up and around, seeking the face of the one whom she had danced. He was gazing at her with look to profound pain. "Did you love him?" Clover pressed. The question seemed urgent. Yes, Poppy said, I did, very much. Oh, my dear, Clover cried, thrusting the baby she had been holding into Valerian's paws. She rushed over to Poppy and gave her an engulfing hug. Poppy hugged her back. As she did, she saw from the corner of an eye the mouse who she had danced with. His face awash with grief, rushed past and flung himself up the tunnel.